Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Braxton Kirsting, and I am one of the data management solutions experts here at MLC CAD Systems. And today we're going to be taking a look at a task-oriented approach to project management processes, your day-to-day duties using SOLIDWORKS Manage. One of the questions I frequently ask our customers when I'm on site implementing PDM or SolidWorks Manage is, what prompts you to do work when you come in for the day? Do you know what you need to do? Or what is driving you to do these tasks? Is it a work order coming through? Or are you starting a new project? Is your boss telling you just need to do it? Or a change request come through and you need to investigate the validity of it or the cost of effectiveness in implementing a change that has been requested. Ultimately there's something driving you to perform some task, and with Manage we have the ability to document these tasks as a tangible record, so that we can look back further down the line and see what has happened and what you've done throughout a period of time. Do you have to produce any documentation for audits? Do you have to know exactly what you did on a change process a year ago? What work went into that? Maybe what models changed, or an FEA report, or switching suppliers around. Anything that goes into that, you might have a form already, but are you also keeping track of all the incremental changes along the way that culminated in your change? So maintaining these relationships, PDM definitely has the tools to do this. And today what we're going to see is how Manage really kind of rounds out all those edges and makes it a really straightforward process. So one of the first things I'm going to focus in on is process tasks. If we take, for example, an engineering change process, during the course of the change process, there may be forms to be filled out, maybe some analysis to determine the scope of the change, CAD design work to actually implement the change. Generally speaking, there are often repeated tasks that must always be performed in a given process. Every time a new process is initiated, wouldn't it be great if we had all these tasks automatically generated? And the relationships between these tasks were actually created automatically with our process itself. In PDM, you might be familiar already with workflows and pushing files through states, and we know PDM is really focused on one file, one state. They can build these custom relationships as well, but that's more of a manual process. So we're going to see how Manage handles this and how we can configure it to provide some more automation in your lives. Automation is certainly one of those things that everyone is trying to incorporate more of in their day-to-day duties. So what we're looking at here is my initial login. I take a look at my tasks to see what I need to do in a given day. The first one that I have selected here is actually just a link with an attachment to an assembly file. And they're wanting me to update some bombs, add some non-modeled parts to the bill materials that would be constituted as a record in SOLIDWORKS Manage. Looking through a few of these other ones, I have a couple tasks that are related to projects, and we'll see that here in a few minutes as well. This one in particular is one of my new product introduction processes. The cool thing about these tasks and these attachments is if I right click, I can jump immediately to this record. And if I select the task tab, this is actually where that task originated from. Now, I want to start from scratch though. Let's incorporate a new product introduction process, and let's see what it looks like from the beginning. So I'll just right click, say new. Give it a new description. So this is going to be a new circular saw design for any big box store. And just going to give it some target goals here for my new product that we're looking to introduce to the market. And the cool thing with this is I'm actually going to create a project from the process. It's very similar to how we're going to see the tasks are created. So more automation coming through, and we'll actually be interacting with the project this creates in a little bit. Now, I have actually two different paths as well. If I'm maybe working on an old design, I might go the express route. If this is a new design altogether, we'll probably have a more standard approach to this. Now, I'm making sure to fill out the ones with the red asterisks, and the reason is these are required fields. Without these, we cannot continue on. So I need to specify who the project manager is going to be. Select Brian here. And my development lead, we're going to go ahead and assign that to Kaylee. And my engineering lead, I will make myself. Give it a little bit more information here. And I'll go ahead and save my changes now. And, I kicked this off. I'm going to go ahead and try and send this off to the next step in the process. And you'll see that we're actually stopped from doing this because there was a task automatically created, and this particular process has been configured to prevent us moving on to the next step until we've completed all these tasks. So it's a good way of enforcing your procedure, but also enforcing that the actual work is done. So I'm going to say OK to this, and what you'll see is it actually navigates it to the task tab and shows me what's holding me up from sending it to the next stage. So we can see if I double click on this, it'll actually open the task record information. And it looks like I just need to attach a concept sheet to this process. And another thing you might notice is this task is assigned to Brian. And the way it did that is when I selected the project manager on the creation, based on that selection, it assigned this task to Brian, and that's completely configurable. You can customize that however you want or to whatever user you want if there's one particular user responsible for a given task. Now, Brian's actually already communicated with me this concept sheet and sent it over to me, so I'll go ahead and attach that for him. So I'll go to my attachments here and go ahead and add this concept sheet. And since I'm the owner, I'm the kind of the person that drove him to do this work. I'm going to go ahead and mark this completed for him. And after doing so, I can now send it off to the next stage. I'll go ahead and select myself to continue on with this process. I'll keep ownership of it. And you'll see now that the task is completed, it let me move it on to that next stage. So with that little demonstration, what we saw is we get that process to task relationship, and it's automatically created when the task is generated from the initiation of the process. We also have automatic assignment of these tasks. So we're filling this information out. Not only is it helpful for anyone viewing the process record, but it's helpful to automatically assign these tasks to a given person, which makes it a little bit more flexible. You might have multiple users who are capable of completing these tasks, and so it allows you to spread out your resources a little bit and be a little bit more agile. And lastly, we're enforcing procedures by following the process, but on top of that, we're also enforcing tasks and giving the user maybe a little bit more guidance of what's expected of them, what deliverable we're looking for to signify that that task is actually completed. Now, if you've heard of Manage before or seen anything about Manage, you know that processes are one part of it, and projects are actually another area of the software. So a lot of projects also have repeated tasks. And so what we're going to see is the project that I created on the initial process creation is going to have a whole bunch of tasks that are just generated automatically. And we're going to see a lot of that same behavior that we saw in the processes followed into the projects, but we're going to see some more capabilities from the project side of things and how tasks incorporate with the projects themselves. So back on my new product introduction process I started in the last section, what you'll actually see, there's a related projects tab, and there is a record in here. This is actually created when I sent it through that initial stage. Again, just like the task in the beginning, I can right click on this and open the record directly without having to go search for anything. It's that relationship we're building automatically just with the standard procedure here. Now, I mentioned tasks, and there's a lot created here. If I switch over to the tasks tab, we'll actually see all the tasks that are automatically generated based on a Gantt chart template that I have. And that Gantt chart template has these tasks and also has the routing between the particular user selected and who they're assigned to. So if I want to assign, I don't have the rest of these assigned. Assigning them is really easy. I can select multiple at a time, and it's just a right click away. We're going to assign to a user, and for this I'll pick on David. David's going to do my manufacturing stages for me. You see that updates the assigned to column. Now, where's that useful? Let's go switch to the planning section here so we can see our Gantt chart. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my resources so I can see here where I assigned David to those tasks. I actually can see him as being responsible for this particular phase of the project. Now, if I want to add some more resources to this, I select the stage that I'm interested in, click on the resources tab. Well, let's make sure we can make changes first, so I'll check it out. And so now on the resources tab, let's refresh that. I'll go ahead and assign myself for the designs phase and make sure Kaylee is responsible for the tech pubs. And you see, as I'm doing this, my planning chart or my calendar here is updating with those resource names because I've selected my resources to be turned on. Now, you might be wondering, well, we may need a little bit more flexibility. Sometimes maybe we don't know all the tasks that will be required for a given project. You know, we know most of them, but maybe not all of them. Well, good news is adding tasks ad hoc is just as easy as assigning them. If you want to select your stage here, we can go to tasks and we can just simply go to new task. So let's say we want whoever's designing this to reach out to our prototyping lab for availability. And I can also assign this while I create this. And the cool thing too with the task assignments is we're not limited to just one user. I can actually put myself and James responsible. Maybe whoever can get to it first will complete this for me. Save and close. And now you see the new task is listed under this stage. Just give it a little refresh and now you'll see James is also listed as a resource for the design stage. So let's pick on one of these tasks. I'm tasked with producing some 3D models for this new circular saw. So let's go ahead and open this task up, and I've already actually done some work ahead of time. I have some models that I would like to attach as my design for this new product. So opening the task up, I can click on the add, and it's going to bring up a new dialog where I can actually search the vault from this tree. And now I have a filter already assigned here, and it's showing me every single assembly within the vault. It's pretty neat. Go ahead and select the one that I designed for this, and I'll add and close to attach it to my task. And on the progress tab, I can go ahead and mark however much time that I actually spent doing this design work. So I'm going to say I got this done in 32 hours out of the 48 allocated, so I got in a little bit ahead of schedule. Might go ahead and update the dates so that reflects my 32 hours. I didn't work overnight. So I'll mark that against, and you can see how much time is used versus remaining. And at this point in time, actually, let me go ahead and calculate the completion too. So the nice thing there is when I mark this as complete, it'll mark it as 100%, but if I were to just save and close it, it'll actually do a in-between calculation. But I'm going to go ahead and mark this as completed, and that will close out my task. Now, one of the benefits that we get from attaching these models is we're starting to build more and more relationships. One of the things that's automatically happened in the background without my input is it's now associated my assembly with the project deliverables for this stage in the project. Now, if you've used PDM before, you might have done this tracking with maybe a variable on a data card to signify a project number or product number. In this case, I have a direct link between the record of the project and the assembly itself. So I can always see that in like a where used from Manage's perspective. Now I refreshed it again because the other thing that I wanted to illustrate is that there is now an automatic calculation of the completion of a given stage based on the tasks completed in the allocated time for those tasks. So you see this little black bar, this is updated because I completed the design 3D model task. Now there's still some others in here, so that's why it's not completely finished. So we still need some FEA analysis, and we still need to create the shipping BOM for our new product. Now, I mentioned the where use. I'm going to go ahead and jump to this assembly just to give you an idea of what that looks like from a managed perspective. So same where used. I can expand that so you get some text with it. And we've talked about processes. I briefly mentioned bombs. In this case, it's a project that it's associated to. So we get that direct link here as well as from the project. So it's all about building these relationships and really tying together the complexity of a given organization's structure. So just like the processes, we get tasks built into the project templates, makes these projects repeatable, builds in some automation as well, which everyone's going to appreciate, and make sure everyone knows what is expected of them. So the automatic assignment at creation linking to actual fields that are looking at users makes it easy as a project manager to make sure that you're assigning the appropriate resource to a given task. The ability to attach your models to these tasks, and also when they're completed to automatically update your project as a deliverable, really solidifies what work you've done and what contribution you've made to the project. And also, if there's any reporting being done, you're going to be able to see what models or what files in general were created for a given stage. The other great thing about the project management side of things with tasks is now we're automatically updating stage progress based on the task completion. And the time spent or allocated to these tasks will give you a somewhat accurate percentage completed. Now, I've been talking about the allocation of time for the tasks. We've seen how the tasks in Manage help build the relationships between the individual deliverables and processes and projects that have been worked on and how they're associated. And a large part of utilizing the tasks is, seeing how much estimated work is assigned to your employees. overworking your employees or loading up with too much responsibility is a recipe for burnout and ultimately turnover, which if can be avoided, it's definitely to your benefit to do so. Let's take a look at that. What does the resource management look like from SOLIDWORKS Manage perspective? So what we can do from the project that we're already in, go up to Tools, and I get ability to do capacity planning. So with the capacity planning, I can go ahead and select individual projects. In this case, I'm just going to select the circular saw that I've just created, and we'll go ahead and apply that. Now, what we're seeing immediately is how much time or duration of time is assigned for given stages of a project, and we can see how those are subtracted from, in this case, the given hours in a month. So right now, this is actually just a total of the hours required for a given stage, and we can actually toggle this between stages and tasks. Now, that's all great, but I want to know how it's affecting my employees, my users, and how much maybe more work they can take on, or maybe I should back off on some. So by selecting the project, I can actually just pull in the users that are associated with a given project. So I'll add those users in. And you might have noticed the tasks were 0. After I brought in the users, we can see now the number of hours for the actual tasks required. So bringing in the users, we see myself, David, James, and Kaylee, the users that I've assigned to the tasks in the project. And what you'll notice is, the hours have been subtracted based on the total of a given month. And right now I'm operating at 100% efficiency, meaning I'm willing to schedule 100% of my employees' time. Now, if you want to build in maybe some leeway or some room for professional development, we can always back this down, this efficiency down, and refresh to recalculate. Now you'll see actually the colors change. We have a nice conditional formatting to really draw your attention to if you're maybe overworking an individual employee. If you're seeing some red, you might want to see if you can reallocate some tasks to free up some of their time and maybe lighten the workload if at all possible. Maybe I want to dig in a little bit deeper on why a user has so much. What are they actually doing? I can right click on that user and go to details. And this will break it down a little bit further as to what's been assigned versus what's already been completed. And if you built in holidays or you want to see how the weekend's associated to it, maybe you want them to come in on a Saturday and work a little bit extra to get ahead. We can kind of see how that all plays into the available time in a given month. Another way to visualize these tasks is with the task charts. This gives you a nice little breakdown of maybe day by day of how many tasks you're assigning, for a given day. Maybe you want to update the dates assigned for a user's tasks so that they feel a little bit more spread out, like they can actually get to all of them. Now, I'm used to seeing a calendar. I'm checking my calendar when I come into work. I want to know what I need to do. And Manage has the same functionality for the user. So as a administrator or the manager of a given user, what you can actually do is on your home page under tasks, there's a show calendar option. And with the show calendar, what I can do is select the users that I'm the manager of and see what work that they have to do. Notice how it's jumping to a task as I select through these users. If I select a given task, it'll jump to it. And I can even expand this to a full month at a time to give maybe some better visibility. So hover over them, you can right click and open the task to see what we're expecting them to do. So here's the task that I actually just assigned to James. And if we need to update the date, you can do that from the task, save and close, and just give this a little refresh. And we see that task automatically updates. Or maybe this is useful for you to actually see when they're available. I see James has some time between the 15th and 18th. Maybe I need to squeeze in another task. So if I right click and say new, it's automatically going to pick up on those days, and I can go ahead and start filling out the pertinent information for him to complete this task. So the capacity planning really gives you that bird's eye view. Make sure that you can utilize your resources to their fullest extent, but maybe not overdo it to keep your workers happy, keep the morale high, and overall just keeping up their efficiency. Task charts are just a nice way to also visualize the task maybe in a different way, see how they're stacking up on any given day for any particular user for a given project in the capacity planning. Calendar views are also really nice because we can clearly see, project assignments as resources or task assignments, and the ability to just create tasks ad hoc from the calendar view, again, just gives you another perspective of what free time or what available time your employees might have. I read an interesting article on Gallup the other day, and in 2017, they estimated the average turnover rate in the US was about 26.3%. Now, for a given organization of 100 people, let's say an average salary of $50,000, that could cost up to $660,000 to $2.6 million per year for those companies. And they're actually estimating over $1 trillion of loss just in turnover in the US. So again, I really think that keeping your workers happy, and part of that I think is not overworking them, will definitely bode well for you. And so these tools that we see for the resource planning and utilizing these tasks to accomplish that goal, I think will definitely help retain your employees and keep your talent on board, and prevent having to spend more on training new hires. Now, we've seen how we can assign new tasks, but what if we want more of a wrap up after they've completed what we've assigned? So a lot of companies do this by having their employees fill out the timesheets. Maybe they want to log them against a project so they know if they're coming in under or over budget, or if there's change orders and they need to bill for that time spent. These timesheets are a good way to see where that time was allocated to. So if you're doing this in a spreadsheet, it might be a little disjointed. And what we're going to see in Manage is how we can take a project or task-based approach to really understand how much time was spent and build those relationships between that time and the timesheets and the projects and the processes. So on my home tab, there is a timesheet section. What I'm going to be doing here is just filling out my personal time spent on that design stage of the project we just saw. So I'm going to go ahead and just say new, got a new timesheet, and I'm going to add a week here. Now this particular week, I worked on the new circular saw for the big box store. I was personally involved with the design stage. I'll go ahead and click apply there, and just by doing that, we've built this relationship, and I really didn't have to go hunting for anything. It was presented directly to me. The other really cool thing that we can do here is we can turn on the task, and I can point it to one particular task that I did. So I want to show completed because it's one of the ones that I did. Let's filter this down to only the project that I am logging in this particular case, and we see my task right here, 100% complete. I'll go and say OK to that and add it to my timesheet. So now we have this link. If I click on it, I get the information about that task. If I right click and go to properties, I can pull up that information of what was done, and I can see the model created. Again, we're just building these relationships so we can always have this information at our fingertips. Of course, you don't need to add the tasks individually or even add these hours in. What you'll notice is the time allocated and time and use is all being filled out, and that's actually driven by the allotted time for the design stage of our project template. Now, once I've filled out everything that I need to, in this case, I've linked it to the project. That's my main goal here. I'm going to go ahead and save my timesheet, and I can then submit it for approval to my particular manager. I'll go ahead and send that off, and my manager is actually the admin for this, so I'll have to actually log in as the administrator to see that timesheet process. Come in over here to timesheets, find myself, and here's that log that I just created, or that record I just created. So I might review this, look at the details, and determine whether I approve or reject it. Any supplemental information can also be added at any time, but this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and approve it, and that will close out that particular timesheet. And just to round this out full circle, if I go back to my project, and I take a look at my individual stages, I can see how that time sheet is logged against a given stage. So if I select the design stage where I was responsible for the model creation, under the timesheets tab, we now see that information that I just filled out. Again, everything's always accessible. It's always visible to what it's related to. So if you are tracking your timesheets, Manage does provide that ability to create them and reference actual tasks that have been assigned and completed within the environment. So we can know exactly how much time a given user spent on a given day for a given task or project stage. And with the process to actually manage those timesheets, we do have the ability to review them and ultimately decide if the employees provided enough information that we need for our documentation as a project manager. So that concludes my webinar on task in SOLIDWORKS Manage. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If there are any questions that you have for us, please post them in the chat, and we'll address them each individually. Thank you. Thank you for joining.